Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and welcome to another episode of Haunted Gaming. This time we take a look at August Creepypasta of the month. I know I've missed a couple, a few really, and I'll make up for them, don't worry. But this one is simply titled, Nightmare Fuel. Can you survive? Posing that question, will we survive this creepypasta? Is it worthy of the August Creepypasta of the month title? Well, sit back, relax, and let's find out what happens in Nightmare Fuel. Can you survive? I've always had a fascination with dreams. What they are, how they happen, what people see, etc. Needless to say, I've done some research on dreaming. Dreams have always captured my interest, but the thing I always have liked more are nightmares. I don't know why, but I love them, even when they happen to me. When I attempt a lucid dream, I always use the WILD strategy, which is the wake-induced lucid dreaming strategy. Just because I can get a chance at sleep paralysis. It's crazy, right? Well, anyways, the only thing I like more than dreams and nightmares would have to be video games, especially, as you could imagine, horror games. A few months ago, I was searching on the internet for horror games I had not yet played. I went on forums, and all the people I had asked all referenced either games that I had already played, or that were well known for carrying many viruses. Everyone except for one individual, whose username was HDExist. When I asked inside of the forum he was in, he was the last to respond. He told me that he knew of a game that very few people knew of, and the ones who knew of it described it as the most terrifying thing that it had ever experienced. He told me that if I gave him my email, that he would send me a download link. I was curious to say the least, and a bit skeptical. But my curiosity took over, and I decided I might as well check out the game. I then set up my antivirus software and gave the mysterious user my email. Once I sent him my email in the private chat, I instantly got an email from him that contained the link. The link was to a site called nightstopper.com, which I had never heard of before. The email also instructed me to hit the NF download tab at the top of the site. I clicked on the link and I was brought to the site. The site appeared to be a game shop, which for whatever reason primarily consisted of horror games. At the top of the site, there had been a tab that read NF Download. I clicked on the tab and was brought to a blank black page with a bright white button in the center. There was no caption or anything, just a button. I contemplated pressing the button, but then I remembered that I had my antivirus software up, and that my computer kinda sucked anyways. I mustered up all my courage and hit the button, and once I did, the computer lagged a bit and then shut down. I scrambled to the power button and turned the computer back on, and when it turned on now, the screen just went into advertisements. I hadn't even gotten to the startup menu and a game was already loading. I had no idea what the game was until the title screen showed up. The game was called Nightmare Fuel. Can you survive? The game must have been the one I just downloaded, as I had no recollection of getting a game like that. The start screen came up and I pressed the enter key, starting the game. When the game started up, a list of instructions showed up on the screen, and here's what it said. Welcome to Nightmare Fuel. Here is how you play, and what to be careful of. To play, you must have a stable mind, with no huge tragedies in recent memory, and if you do, it is advised that you do not start the game. Number 2. It is advised that you should have had some experience with lucid dreaming, or at least know how to have one. Number 3. It is advised that you only play if you have no physical injuries. Number 4. It is advised that you do not play if you are on any psychedelic drugs or medication. Number 5. It is advised that you do not play if you have any illnesses, physical or mental. Number 6. Although this may sound crazy, you must set an alarm for exactly 3 a.m. with a song you recognize. Number 7. Wait for the game to begin. Press enter once you have completely read the instructions and precautions. After I set up my alarm clock, I pressed enter, and I got ready to play. Once I had entered, the screen had went black. I waited 20 whole minutes for something to happen, but nothing did. I thought of it as a waste of time anyways and shut off my computer. That night as I was trying to sleep, the game popped into my head, or at least the name of it. The name sounded like the perfect name for a game I'd like, but of course, it just had to not work. Yeah, I felt incredibly let down, but eventually I got over it and went to sleep. Now when I awoke, I was terrified. I was in a room of complete blackness. I instantly looked down at my hands for a reality check and counted my fingers. 7. Thus meaning that I was dreaming. After the sudden rush of excitement and a bit of horror after seeing my strange dream surroundings, white words appeared on a wall in front of me. Welcome to Nightmare Fuel. If you have not noticed yet, you are dreaming. The point of the game is to survive the nightmare. The game ends at 3 a.m. sharp. How will you wake up? Remember that alarm clock? Well, I hope to God that you set it up for 3, with a memorable song. If not, well, you're pretty much stuck here. Fun, right? Well, anyways, you can die one of 2 ways. A fright in reality, which is caused by not avoiding the terror scattered about, or you can die by being killed in the game. Only the strong and brave survive, and you were probably deemed as one of them by the person who gave you the game. So, what do you get if you win? Well, to start, you get to live another day. But in all seriousness, you'll also be shipped $1,000 and all injuries caused will be paid for. There's also the bragging rights involved, but that's besides the point. The room you are in will disappear in a matter of seconds and the game will begin. Good luck. You're gonna need it. As the words disappeared, I noticed the room was falling apart, leaving me alone in an open world filled with who knows what. The sky was dark with red clouds and there were no alive trees or plants. There were no grass, just dirt. Instincts had kicked in, and I knew I had to find shelter to hide from whatever was here. I found a small house after walking for a while. Inside I had heard a voice of a young boy. He was calling for help, and I called back to him and he told me to help him. I walked into the room he was in and I was both disgusted and horrified. He was trapped under a huge piece of wood with his eyes gouged out with no shirt on. He had cuts on him with words in some strange language burnt onto his chest. The boy opened his mouth, showed his tongue was split in half. He made out the words, "Can't see, forgot alarum, help." I went over to him and went to go help. When I went to help, I noticed something that made my blood just turn cold. The cuts on him were still fresh, dripping even, indicating that what had just happened to him was very recent, and furthermore warning me that there was something dangerous nearby. Just as I saw the cuts, I heard loud footsteps coming through the hall leading into the room. I then heard something sharp scrape against the wall, and I didn't want to find out what. I jumped out of a nearby window as fast as I could. The boy must have been part of my subconscious. There's no way that the creator of this could have left people actually stranded in this world, I thought to myself, but when I saw what went on in the room through the window, I was beginning to have second thoughts. A woman with 2 small beady eyes and sharp claws walked into the room, and I was shocked. She looked identical to the creature that used to appear in my dreams when I was little. She slowly walked over to the boy, cutting him open in the stomach, putting him out of his misery. Then, to my shock, the woman turned her head 180 degrees, making her twisted demonic face meet with mine. She gave me a sadistic grin, and I ran away as far as I could, not looking back. At this point, I was walking down a bleak dirt road, and I found a dead body. He was missing his left arm, and he had all of his fingers seemingly violently ripped off. Same with toes. He also had a hole in his chest. Inside the hole, I found a watch, which was perfect, as I needed a way to keep track of time. Now, normally in dreams, clocks are unreliable, to say the least, but this one worked like a charm. It was 9. I grabbed the watch and headed on. I walked towards a huge city. The buildings were massive and they were everywhere. All of them were at the very least the size of the Empire State Building. I walked to the center of the city and looked around. I needed to see if there were any other people still living in better shape than the last people I'd come across. I walked into a store when I noticed something getting bigger and bigger by the second. Something falling. Soon I heard glass shatter from all the buildings and watched as hundreds of bodies flew out of their windows. I recognized one of them as my mom, another as my sister, another as my dad. I screamed and ran out of the city. I was out of breath and I just stood there in horror as I watched all the buildings collapse, bodies still falling. I began walking away, trying to process what the hell was even going on. As I was pondering what was going on, I noticed the bodies of the Blue City getting up. Then their mangled bodies sprinted over to me, tracking me down. They were superhumanly fast. I'd be killed in a matter of minutes if I didn't run or hide. And after sprinting 4 minutes, the corpses began catching up, and I knew attempting to run away was futile. As I was running for dear life, I came across a cave, and I knew what I had to do. I walked into the cave and ran. The bodies were nowhere in sight. I kept on running away. The cave got more narrow, so I got on my hands and feet, looked at my watch. 11 o'clock. Kept on crawling and went on, and then stopped. I couldn't move any forward. I then turned around to go back, but I couldn't. I looked behind me and saw this strange creature, long, tall, and featureless. It reminded me a bit of this mythical Slender Man, except this creature had human skin stapled onto it. The creature also had huge claws and a hole in its head. I squirmed and squirmed, but I was stuck. The creature climbed over to me and slowly began cutting into my leg. I let out a cry of agony with every cut the thing put into me. Eventually, I was able to kick the strange creature in the face and squirm my way out. I crawled out of the cave with a bum leg, hoping to God that I could walk on it at least. I saw that I couldn't when I go out of the cave. I dragged my way over to a small pond, stuck my leg in with hopes that the cold water would numb the everlasting pain. Surprisingly, my leg was healed as I put it in. I stood up on it, and I felt only a small amount of pain. I stuck my leg in again to get rid of it, but then the pond turned into a bubbling green pool. My leg started burning when I took it out and realized that it had burned most of the skin off. I got up on both feet, still able to walk on my foot. I noticed mutated creatures began rising out of the water. I ran, each step making me wince with pain. I looked down at my watch, 1 a.m. I was so close to beating this. I ran, and I just flat out ran for the longest time, ignoring the horrifying creatures that were lurking in the distance. Eventually, I had reached a dead end, a huge brick wall. I sat against it and cried. When I looked up, I noticed that I was being surrounded by the mutants from the pond. They walked over to me and began scratching at me. One ripped my index finger clean off. Just as one was about to slit my throat, they all stopped. I stood up, bleeding badly and in constant suffering. The creatures just dropped to the ground, dead. I heard the faint sound of my favorite song in the distance. I looked at my watch. 3 a.m. I had done it. I closed my eyes and waited to wake up, but nothing had happened. I sat down in horror as the time, the watch showed the time as 3:01. The mutants got up from the ground and I bolted away as fast as I could. Once I was sure I'd escaped them, I stopped running. I sat down on a few steps next to a house and wept. I knew that what had happened, as much as I wanted to deny it, I knew that in reality I died of fright. And also, I was going to be in this hell for a pretty long time. Well, that was interesting, the concept of it all. Despite being a creepypasta of the month, I don't kind of see why. I mean, I've read many others, and some of them deserve the title more so. Not to say this one's awful or anything, because it's not. It's not bad. It's good, but I just don't see why it's that good that it's placed above the others, rather. The other ones that I've read, really. Because there are, better options out there. Now, one thing for sure, though, is it is very different. It's got this nice concept. It plays out like that ritual pasta we did Hell.exe, a lot with the game being this portal kind of thing, really. Now, over here, what occurs is the person comes across a game, they fall asleep, and somehow they get sent to this world. And really, they're asleep, and, well, the stuff is so scary in this dream world that it ends up killing you in reality because of the spooks, I guess, really. Now, the acquisition of the game was completely, normal. It was all done fine. It wasn't played up or anything. So I gotta give it congrats on that. But as soon as you get into this world, right after, you fall asleep, that's where this creepypasta starts to fall off. There's a concept that's really cool, but over here it feels like that concept isn't played effectively enough. For example, a lot of this imagery can be scary, but we're not given a lot of context. So it doesn't affect us the way it should. For example, that lady. I mean, just because we're told that the player has seen it earlier in their life doesn't really affect us how it should. Seeing somebody's eyes gouged out or reading about it isn't going to scare us. Now, if you gave us context as to why and built up this ominous feeling, then it would actually be somewhat scary. Now, again, interesting premise, really interesting, not used the way it should be. It's not totally bad or anything, once again, the ending was interesting, and in a way I knew it was coming. It's a somber, somewhat fitting end. I'd like to see this one fleshed out, though. I feel like this one has a lot of potential. It's a good creepypasta, just, it's on that edge where it can be really great versus just, your regular creepypasta. So, my honest opinion, I'd like to see more inclusion of this game, first of all, and if that's the case, if the game is more included in, if we're sent to this world, I'd like to see, this imagery playing more into context, and a little toned down, too. I mean, seeing bodies and gouged out eyes, it's gore porn, really, and it doesn't, sort of elevate the creepypasta at any new height. If all that's taken care of, really, I think it'd be great. In the end, this was August Creepypasta of the Month. Again, democracy. I may not agree with it sometimes, but hey, the community to decide that this was worthy of that title. And I'm going to leave that to every individual watcher over here. As always, I do ask, what would you rate this, and what would you change to make it better? This has been another episode of Haunted Gaming, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.